last weekend I finalised solving one of the most famous theorems in physics, Bell's theorem, and I explained what the hidden variables are. And I have two mathematical proofs to Goldbach's conjecture and proof to the Collat's conjecture, which are both so short, they're condensed and they're in 1 minute videos each. Goldbach's conjecture, I elaborated that and I clarified exactly what the mathematical mechanism is, and I put that in a 3-minute video last week. So before anybody starts to doubt that what I'm going to talk about is pseudoscience or I'm a crackpot, check those mathematics and check Bell's theorem, and you'll see that even though I'm not getting recognition and I'm getting censored and getting called an idiot and all kinds of things by the scientific community, that I am actually a scientist and I've done what many people might think is highly unlikely. Seems kind of impossible, but you go and see for yourself, check the facts that I've done it, and hopefully you'll start to take what I'm talking about a lot more seriously. Just an update on my channel. Over the weekend I solved the hidden variables within Bell's theorem, explaining why there's no contradiction between Bell's equations and quantum mechanics, and I did a video explaining that, and as usual the response from the status quo in the physics community is underwhelming. Previous to this, after solving the theory of everything, quantum gravity, beta decay, the equations of 137, every time I come with a breakthrough, the response is just like so negative, it's unbelievable. These guys are supposed to be scientists, and they remind me of human artificial intelligence, which is it's really dangerous when people are programmed with information which they are told is fact, and they can't think for themselves beyond what's clearly not fact. It's really it's really dangerous, and humanity is in that kind of dangerous place. I had an experience last night in the hostel I'm staying with, and this guy just flipped his lid for no apparent reason. He started going around trying to fight with everybody and threatening to shoot people. It just reminded me of human artificial intelligence. And some people just can't think for themselves. And a lot of these guys are controlling the media, they're controlling science. The Big Bang's been proven wrong. The James Webb proves this wrong. The Indian Space Agency at Bangalore, they published a paper in 2021 explaining why the universe actually isn't expanding, because people haven't been taking into account the blue shift readings. They've only been focusing on the red shift, but there's actually blue shift readings showing that the universe is oscillating in different directions. So when you go with the Indian data, shows that the universe is speeding up, slowing down, if you follow the Hubble principle. It just shows that the Big Bang is wrong, but their information has been censored. It's not allowed to be taught in any institutions in the West, any universities. It's not allowed in any scientific media. That's science. Science isn't allowed in the West. And NASA are pumping out these videos about that they're working on time travel and fast and light travel and all this nonsense. And they must just think, well, we got away with telling them that we went to the moon, so they must be real idiots. And you have people like Brian Cox and Neil deGrasse Tyson who can't argue with the physics of the moon landing. So what's easier, just call people knobheads or call them idiots. And because they have a PhD in time travel and a PhD in the Big Bang pseudoscience, well then nobody's going to question them. And they are skilled media manipulators, how they present things. So people trust that they're actual scientists. They're good at remembering data sometimes. They're not scientists. They've contributed nothing to science, but they're trusted, and people suck in what they say like it's fucking baby's milk. And it's much easier to call someone stupid, an idiot, or a knobhead rather than talk science. Because when you look at the science of the moon, NASA astronauts on the space station have admitted time and time again we can't get beyond close Earth orbit. We can't get living beings far beyond close Earth orbit. And on the other hand, they're still saying that they went to the moon. And when you look at the science, and even Buzz Aldrin admitted that they never went. He was caught in a clip in 2015 admitting they never went to the moon. And when you look at the facts, even the fact that International Space Station astronauts are saying we can't get past close Earth orbit in quantum age technology, 50 years after these guys said they went to the moon in post World War II tin cans. When you look at that lunar lander that's supposed to have landed on the moon, it's literally like something out of fucking Thunderbirds. It's so stupid. But because these guys have massive control of the media, massive control of minds, they're saying, oh yeah, we went to the moon. If you look at the press conference of the moon, they're sitting there like people who are caught in the headlights, like they're being interrogated, and they're looking at each other for clues. So who's going to talk next? I don't want to say anything wrong. You compare that with someone who's won something like the World Cup or the sort of really big sports tournament. It's complete obvious they can't contain their excitement, and these guys are sitting there like they're going to be caught any minute. And all the physics, so much. One of the so-called moon rocks was presented in the Netherlands, and they checked it years later, and it turned out to be fossilized wood on the moon. Fossilized wood on the moon. They say that I know that people have been programmed by things like the Big Bang Theory, the comedy show on TV, and one of the episodes I saw of them was standing on the roof looking at the moon and saying, that's definite proof that we went to the moon because we can fire lasers off the moon, and those lasers were put on by men. Scientists at MIT were bouncing lasers off the moon in 1963, and their experiments were covered in the 1966 December edition of National Geographic, years before these guys pretended they went to the moon. And that kind of conditioning is really hard to break free. That's a kind of hypnosis, and it's really hard to break free from. And the particle model doesn't make sense. Neither does the Big Bang. The Big Bang's been proven wrong by so many things. The particle model has particles moving in empty space in corkscrew type paths. If you kick a ball, it's going to go straight. But no, these things go in corkscrew type paths through empty space. It's just doesn't make sense because it's wrong. And they say that these forces, which exert forces on each other without having any physical connection. Again, it's just Marvel type science fiction or X-Men type science fiction. If you want to pull a car up a hill or push a car up a hill, there has to be a rope tied to the car, a physical connection or all the time to pull it up the hill. If you want to push it, you have to have your hand attached to the car. You can't do it from a distance and exert a mysterious telekinetic force. It's science fiction nonsense. Brilliant mathematics, but it's not science. And it happened in Greece, in ancient Greece, when Ptolemy and his mathematical friends, they had these fantastic mathematical models of how the sun and the planets revolve around the earth, and they can predict exactly when they're going to turn. And then along came Aristarchus of Samos, and he said, brilliant mathematics, but it's wrong because the earth revolves around the sun. And he was hounded, persecuted. I'm not sure how he ended up, but I've heard some people say that historical accounts say that he was burned alive at the stake. So it's hard to tell with history, especially when it's been covered up by people who have a vested interest in the truth not getting out. And that's more or less what's happening with the particle model. It's fantastic mathematics, and these guys just can't face the fact that just because their mathematics is so accurate, it's describing the interpretation is the wrong thing. And my work shows that the particle model is wrong. Time and time again, in so many ways, it just doesn't make sense because there is no empty space. Everything is connected with strings so small they're basically invisible. We can't see them, but energy moves through them. Vortexes move through them. That's what everything is. Everything is made out of vortexes, which clump together, which pull each other, which accelerate, acting like propellers, accelerate each other through space, through the lattice. Sorry, there is no space, but what we traditionally call empty space. There's no empty space. It's a lattice, which are described by Einstein's equations. I could probably go on, and people who have already been lost to artificial intelligence, who have already been programmed, is probably a reality that's just too difficult or painful or head blowing for them to face, and it's much easier to just turn away and go back to pseudoscience, unfortunately. But for anybody who is able to think for themselves and do real science, I have solved the theory of everything and two of the most famous mathematical conjectures in history. And if you want to go with the most neutral of all sciences, mathematics, look at those two conjectures, Goldbach's conjecture and proof that a second loop is impossible in the Collat's conjecture, and it'll open up your mind to the fact of just how resistant to the truth current academics are, because they're completely bound and programmed with the particle model and the Big Bang model, and it's like nothing else is allowed. But it's the only thing that's going to save humanity from what I can see. And I had two really, really vivid, powerful dreams last night, which prompted me to make this video. I've tried to make it a few versions, but it just looks like it's too easy for people to say, "Oh, this guy is just another tin hat guy." But those two mathematical proofs are absolute evidence that I'm a real mathematician. I'm a real scientist. If one of the academics had solved even one of those mathematical problems, they would be legendary all around the world. But because it's me, and because of the theory of everything, and because they don't come with an institution, the reaction has been quite the opposite, being censored, taken off Reddit, taken off other forums, other mathematicians' blogs, for whatever reason. But anyway, I hope people do check the facts. If anybody wants to look at my music channel, I've been homeless for the last 8 years since I found out how the banking system works, and I refuse to pay money that I don't owe anybody. I refuse to pay it to a mafia organisation which are running wars. So my house was stolen by the banks and the government, who are basically the two different parts of the one organisation. And so I busk, play music, usually a couple of hours every day, to get money to eat and drink, and occasionally stay in a hostel. And I have some music videos on a music channel, which the dream indicated I should share on this channel in case anybody wants to. If there's some value to anybody, there's a few songs there. They're all the ones that I made on my phone. There's a few kind of poking fun at the particle model and the Big Bang and talking about the theory of everything. And there's one about the machine to test for what's really happening in the double slit experiment and in quantum entanglement. A spooky action at a distance, but because it implies a higher consciousness and possibly a creator of the universe, it seems like this atheist cult in science, people just don't want to try a simple experiment which basically costs nothing. Just go in and use the setup that's already there in almost every university physics department, but people don't want to. And so I'll link that down below. If anybody wants to see my other work, my qualification is I'm a trained interpreter, a sign language interpreter, and I have a sign language channel. It's called Communication is Everything, where I went after my house was stolen by the banks. I ended up going to Africa. Somebody brought me to Africa, and so I ended up working around Africa in different countries, developing sign language dictionaries for people, for deaf communities in Africa. Not doing the signs, just overseeing the managing the project. The deaf people did their signs. I didn't get involved in the signing at all, apart from to explain general sign language linguistics. But the project was done by the deaf people in Africa themselves, and so if anybody wants to see that, I was a qualified interpreter, and I worked in all different kinds of situations, social situations, education, government level, Was sometimes working with people from the UN, international level. Uh, but then I went to Africa and worked in Africa and saw how people really live, and ended up in some really, really neglected areas, um, often with no money, living with the same conditions that people live with in Africa, and it's truly horrific. One of the places where I was in Malawi, there was I met a guy who was busking, um, and he made his own instruments and he busked, and he had albinism, and albino, as people say. And in Malawi, albinos are hunted. They're kidnapped, murdered, and their bodies are cut up and eaten. Because there's certain people in Africa who believe that this gives them power, and that's just one example of how backwards a lot of people are in Africa, just because they've been deprived education, because everything has been stolen from them. Ghana has some of the top mathematicians in the world, even though their education system has been desecrated by the IMF and their policies, and Africa is just basically everything is stolen, and the potential is huge. But it woke me up to the reality and how hard life is when there's no water left, and you've no way out, and the only water is what's in the river, brown water. People shit in the river a few miles up, but you've no choice. You have to drink it. And of course you're sick with diarrhea, and you've got malaria, and massive horrific conditions for people with disabilities. One example is in one of the countries there was one of the conferences was a woman, and she was blind, and the men in the village were coming in and abusing her at night, and she couldn't identify them. And it's just example. There's other people who are chained to posts because they're deaf or they're blind all their lives. They could be as intelligent as Einstein, but because they don't even have access to language, they're treated like they're animals. And that channel is called Communication is Everything. So if anybody wants to check that out, you're welcome to check that out as well. And that's perhaps why I had the skill set to solve the theory of everything, because as a trained interpreter, we're taught to not interpret something if it doesn't make sense. Everything should make sense, and if it's not making sense, you're doing the wrong interpretation. So when I came across quantum physics, I couldn't swallow this idea that quantum physics is just bizarre and it doesn't make sense. That's just the way quantum physics is. I couldn't accept that as an interpreter, and I worked on it and studied it and found a way that it does make sense. But of course it proves the particle model wrong and it proves the Big Bang wrong, and of course I have to put up with all the anti-science that is controlling the world at the minute. And the bottom line is that I have experiments, very simple experiments, to test all my theories, but people are just unwilling to run them. They don't like the idea, even though they're very simple experiments. I've sent it to hundreds of people, probably thousands of people at this stage, and tried talking to people about them. Just like this, it's just like the switch off. You're talking about a higher consciousness, about a creator. No, it's like they can't entertain that idea. Even though when you look at nature, everything points to a creator. Everything points to a creator. So that's just a video update on my channel, which was prompted by those dreams last night. And I hope it's of value to someone, and someone starts being really serious and really taking my work really seriously and trying the experiments, because the consequences of us continuing with this, the way the world is, the madness that's gripping the world, all the kind of artificial intelligence gripping the world, whether it's to do with sexuality or money or drugs. People believe in really, really bizarre ideas and thinking that they're normal, and they're that are anything to do with science or economics and stuff like that, it's looking pretty bad for the world unless something happens. And physicists say they're looking for a theory of everything, but thousands of them have read my theory of everything, and because it clashes with their programming, they're not even willing to run an experiment. So it's really dangerous. It's really dangerous for humanity. So please take a look at the evidence. That's what scientists do. And run the experiments. That's what scientists do. And if you do, may the grace of God and the force of love be with you.